Jeff Jarrett, let's talk a little bit about just how your involvement, how you guys started in this pro wrestling sports entertainment business.
Well, it's everybody's got a different story, but mine is pretty. Shall I say that it's how most families. I guess if a guy's a plumber, he grows up, his son gets into the plumbing business if he owns a plumbing business, or gets into building houses or whatever, car dealerships. They just follow in their dad's footsteps. Same with me. My dad, actually my grandmother on my dad's side of the family, and my grandfather on the other side of the family. My grandfather wrestled and promoted. My grandmother, she used to tell me I've done everything but wrestle in the wrestling business. So then my dad, of course, he wrestled, and then he became a promoter. And during the 70s and 80s, there was actually 22 regional promotions across the United States, and he was one of the 22. So I've grown up in the business, grown up watching it, and just followed in his footsteps.
Is it harder to do it that way? Is it easier? What are some of the pluses and minuses?
I've been asked this question 1,000 times, and it's real easy now that I've been in the business over 10 years. It's absolutely a blessing because you get in, you get your first break easier because you've got more contacts. You've been around the people your whole life, so getting in is a lot easier. Staying in is a lot harder because the politics of wrestling. Sometimes I pay for the sins of my dad. Just like any other business, but staying in, and you're always compared. You're always the old timers will remember your dad and try to compare you to him, and then a lot of people will look at you getting in the business and say it's been handed to you on a silver platter, and that's the furthest thing from it for me. I've worked as hard or harder than anybody else who's in the game today.
Now, some of the terms like slap nuts and all, is this something that you created? Is this something that a few people helped out with? How did that all come about?
Well, the slap nuts deal, actually my grandmother who passed away a year or two ago, she used to call people slappy. And slappy was somebody who thought they knew everything but knew nothing. And slapping your gums together, just running your mouth is where it came from. So she used to call them slappy, and then just one day slap nuts came out, and just the very next week, I said it on one Nitro, and the very next Nitro there was like 10 or 11 signs out in the crowd, and I said, I'm on to something here, so I just ran with it.
What are your thoughts? We know some guys have been injured in WCW. We know some guys left WCW. What are your thoughts of where WCW is right now and what needs to happen for WCW, for its fans?
Number one, we've got to get a vision, a direction. And that's the difference between WWF and WCW. Of course, everybody knows on the surface that WWF, of course, now it is a publicly held company, but Vince is still the boss. It's his vision, his direction, his company. The buck stops with him. WCW, it's always been a different kettle of fish, and it always will be because it's in a corporate world. It went from the Jim Crockett days to the Turner days to then the Time Warner days, and then within the next 12 months it's going to be AOL Time Warner. So it's the largest media conglomerate in the world, and we're just one subsidiary of, they say, a couple hundred different companies within the umbrella. So we have a lot more chiefs to answer to. There's a lot more chiefs in our organization, whereas in Vince there's only one. So organization we have to be, everybody has to be on the same page, and right now it's easily to tell not all of us are on the same page, and that's what has to work out for the company to move forward.
The internet, it's good, it gets a lot of exposure. It's bad because once a rumor's on the internet, everybody picks the thing up. One of the things on the internet, one thing I saw was about your father possibly coming into WCW. Is there any truth to that at all?
Not at all. I mean, yes, they asked to meet with him, and he gave him some of his thoughts and reflections, but he's in the real estate development business, and quite honestly, he doesn't want to get on a plane every week. He doesn't have to. He's at a stage in his life that he's, shall I say, staying at home living the good life and only doing things that he really wants to do. And he knows that the wrestling business, you have to live it, breathe it, eat it 24/7. You have to be in the trenches day in, day out to be successful. And he's not willing, and it was crazy for people to even suspect that he would get back in this rat race, because you have to be in it, and you really do have to live it and breathe it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
What do you want to do? Is the World Championship something you'd like to have? Is that something you'd want down the road? What are your thoughts right now?
That's always any wrestler who gets in the business who says they never wanted to become world champion, they're lying. The first time a guy puts on the boots, that's what you're after. You want to be the world champion, and that's has been a lifelong dream of mine. I feel it's my destiny, and one way or another, I'm going to get there. Because when you get that, you can say that you're at the top of the game. So that's something that I'm striving for.
How do you feel about just the different shows that are on WCW? You have on Nitro, you have Thunder, you have Saturday Night. You've been on Nitro, Thunder, Saturday Night.
Right.
Is this something they need you right now, and you're just doing whatever you need to do?
Yeah, I've told them coming in the door that that's my style, that's my personality, because today's fans are so intelligent. I think the days of yesteryear and my dad generation, and even through the 90s, I think the wrestling business took the fans for granted, and maybe, I'm not saying an intelligence factor, but they didn't think they were in the know, so to speak, not just about the fixed outcomes, but just fans, they're not going to shell out $39.95 for a pay-per-view or $29.95 or the $50 ringside or whatever, or buy your merchandise. If they don't think that you're hard-working entertainment, that you're not going out and giving it everything you got, they want to be entertained. So that's my style. I'm not going to shortchange the fans, because you just can't get by with it, quite frankly, this day and time. And a lot of guys make that mistake every time they step in the ring, every time they go to appearance. The fans know. They flat out know, and I'm not going to cheat them. Just because of the fact, when you get to that stage where you're not into it, you're not really caring, it's time to go. Move on to something else. So whether it's a Saturday night taping, whether it's Rick Case Hyundai, whatever it is, you got to go you got to go the extra yard.
Do you like playing a heel?
That's me. Yeah, absolutely I do. Absolutely, without question I do.
And how do you feel about the movies? Now, we have some movies that are coming out. WCW has its own movie coming out, Ready to Rumble. And there's also this documentary that's been receiving good reviews, Beyond the Mat. What are your thoughts of the movies that are coming out now?
I was around, I don't have, to tell you the truth, I don't have a clue about the WCW movie. I hadn't seen it. I've just heard dressing room talk about it. So I really am uninformed of that. The Beyond the Mat documentary, Barry Blaustein, I talked with him. He was around. I was around during some of that film, so I know that guy really put his heart and soul in the project. I hadn't seen the finished product, but I've heard good reviews. But I know the effort was definitely there on their part.
Jeff, what's it like when people do these type of movies, or people write books or write stories about wrestling? Is that part of it also changed a lot, in essence, of people not looking at so much as a freak show, but as something that's real and alive?
Well, Vincent Wayne strives and still strives every day to get into the mainstream, but we're always going to be on that fringe, and I think that wrestling uses that to its advantage. If we're too mainstream, if we become too accepted, I don't think it's good for us. If we stay right on that fringe of these guys are a little bit out there. These are men throwing each other off the top of cages and doing all kind of different stunts and storylines, and it's as long as we stay unique, it's to our benefit.
And who are some of the guys that you've wrestled that you know after the match, hey, we put on a show, we had a good match? You've had a lot of companions that you've competed against.
Yeah, I hate to name names, because either one, I'll leave someone out, or I'll say something and the guy will take it the wrong way. But
how about, go ahead.
But there's a lot of them out there.
You've had some good matches and all with. How about some of the young talent that you are seeing develop here? Are there any guys in that respect that you look at?
There's a group of 8 to 10 guys just coming out of the power plant, or actually still in it, that are definitely have star potential. But to say that a young guy is going to become a star, I think that's putting a curse on him, because in this business, you really are only as good as your last match. I think some powers that be don't agree with that, and some guys live off name recognition, and that's good to a certain degree. But our fans, they know what's up.